As I mentioned in the previous video, you're going to be making narratives, but you're not going to have any actors or have any scripts. Occasionally you will be in them or someone else will be in them, but I'm going to ask you to just perform actions and not acting, and we'll talk about that more later, and to have minimum dialogue. So one of the first things I want to do is talk about how we can use our camera to tell the story. I asked you to give a list of ingredients on discussion board, so please make sure that you're doing that throughout the week as well. And you'll see that there's so many things that we have in video to work with. That's why we're going to kind of break it down a little bit at a time. So first, for your first homework assignment, it's going to be about the camera. Trying to come up with some unusual camera angles or ways of showing us the subject that can help contribute to the narrative or how we understand things. So I'm going to pull up this PowerPoint here, discuss unusual shots, and then I want you guys to watch these 3 clips. They're really just one right after another from the TV series called Better Call Saul. You might be familiar with it. When you click on this, let's see, I might already be signed in. No, you're going to get a message that says sign in, and just sign in or click sign in, and then you can watch through. Each one's just a couple of minutes, and I want you to really make note of like all the unusual camera angles. There are some things in here that they're doing that's very unconventional. What would be great is when you turn in your homework assignment, if you wanted to write that down. I'm not going to have you have like a whole discussion board or have to turn it in, but I would like to know, like, when you turn in your homework assignment, you could just write like, I thought, the camera angle that where everything was out of focus except for Saul's head, was interesting, or something like that. So let's just briefly talk a little bit about a few examples of some kind of unusual, they're not that unusual, shots that are used in film, and what do they do. All right, so starting right out, we have from Silence of the Lambs, an extreme high angle. All right, so when you're going to be using your camera, I want you for this first homework assignment to think extreme, not just like sort of I'm up, like pointing down a little bit. I want you to really get on top of your subject and point down on it. So think about this shot. Why do they have it as a wide angle shot? Well, it gives us a lot of information. It allows for this really cool alignment of the 2 bodies, right? So his figure and then his figure behind. We really couldn't get that sort of overlapping from any other camera angle. Look at how their arms kind of almost line up. Again, we couldn't get that from like if we were just pointing at him or if we were down on the ground. And the other thing that's really great about this shot is it allows us to get his facial expression. So his face is kind of pointed up. So the camera has to be above him. And lastly, it really allows for the emphasis in the color shift. He's wearing all white and he's wearing black. All right, so again, try to imagine this if it was shot from a different angle. Would it have that same impact? It's a really powerful shot because it's shot from such an extreme angle. And moving to the opposite extreme, having your camera down below and pointing up. So maybe you have like a glass table, or you can just get like a piece of glass or something and put your camera below it. Get down on the ground and point your camera all the way up. Put some objects above it on the glass, or just something that's up on the ceiling. Get into some weird positions. I don't want anyone to be comfortable with this homework assignment. I want you to feel uncomfortable. Try to move your camera, get down on the ground, look for some unusual ways to show us something. So this one, why are we down below? What impact does that have? I mean, that makes it feel like he's above us, and we feel the span of the bat wings, right? So it also needs to be a wide angle. So that's also really important, so we can see the full span of the bat wings, and it makes him really quite powerful because it feels like he's right above us. So that's a really interesting technique to use here. Okay, so when you're thinking about the camera, I want you to think extreme, like have all the way at the top pointing down, all the way at the bottom pointing up. And you can try things in between, but I want you to try like really extreme to start with. Another good technique, and you might be familiar with this from photography, is the idea of a frame within a frame. So here we have just like the frame, the camera frame, but then our subject is lit inside another frame. All right, so this is a good technique and something that's used an awful lot. Here's like a great example from The Graduate, where he's being framed and his facial expression is really emphasized, and we see that he's being framed by her leg. All right, so spend a moment, look at your subject and think, okay, is there something interesting I could put in front of it? Maybe you're outside. Could you step behind some trees and like allow the leaves to frame the subject? Or put your subject and put like a chair in front of it, and then you're using maybe the lines in the chair to frame the subject. So trying to sort of step back for a second, not just thinking about shooting the subject. By shooting, of course, I mean video, but trying to think about how if I step back and I could frame it in some interesting way. Another technique could be where you're kind of obscuring or overlapping the subject. So in this one, Breakfast at Tiffany's, we're not just seeing her, but we're seeing her through the reflection of the glass. So things are kind of melding. So this could be kind of interesting. So again, it's about sort of like stepping back. You look at your subject, all right, is there something that could frame it, or is there something that could slightly obscure it? Is there something that could go in front of it that's like partially transparent, right? Like through a glass, like maybe your subject is inside and you're outside, you're on the other side of it. And if there's something on the glass, those two surfaces, the glass and your subject, kind of meld together. Or thinking about reflection. So I think this is a great shot where we get the two of them. They're on opposite sides of the rooms, and we get the mother because she's in the reflection. Or here, another great example of a reflection shot. And notice that this is a close-up. It has to be a close-up because the reflection is really small, and we wouldn't be able to see it if it wasn't. All right, so it's just different ways. Instead of just showing us the truck, you know, we're seeing the truck through the reflection of his sunglasses, which just makes it kind of more interesting. And then, you know, kind of lastly, we can think about placement, other ways to obscure things. So just pure silhouette, that could be kind of interesting, different way to show us something. Here's another example where there's silhouette mixed with really good use of symmetry, right? So like it's also backlit, but we can just a little bit see him. It's not much as much of a silhouette as in the previous one. And strong use of symmetry. So your placement of the subject is really important. This works because of the placement, and so careful and how we have the symmetry like right in the middle here. And sometimes though, right in the middle is boring. So following the rule of thirds, which is place your subject off to the side, essentially create some tension. And the other principle that's happening here is the idea of leading lines. So just very careful placement here. So we have all the crosses like leading, pointing right to him. So we're using leading lines, and his placement is following the rule of thirds. So again, that's just like if you split your image up into thirds, you place the subject on that intersecting third line instead of smack in the middle. And that just creates kind of like interesting tension there. Also notice where this is shot. Where's the camera? So it's not down at his eye level, it's not like behind his shoulder, but it's up a little bit, and it's a wide angle. So it's a wide angle, it needs to be a wide angle, so it gives us the impact of seeing all of those crosses, right? If it was really close up, we wouldn't get that impact, but we need to see all those crosses to get the numbers and to make him seem kind of small. And the camera's up and high a little bit also, again, to kind of make him seem a little bit on the smaller side. And then look at this really awesome placement from The Shining. So this is symmetry, and this symmetry is not boring, I would say. Everything is really kind of, you could almost just cut this right in half and fold it, and it would be mirror symmetry. But look at how careful the placement is of the camera, so that this head doesn't obscure these two figures here. So very, very careful placement. In the beginning, I don't want you to move your camera at all. And this is one of the reasons why. I want you to think of your scenes almost like still photos, so you can really focus on how you're using the camera, where you're placing the camera, how you're showing the subject, and using that to give you the narrative. And don't worry yet about zooming in or zooming out or panning the camera. We're just not going to do that yet. And I think this is almost the last one here. Great example of using extreme close-up. So I like extreme. Push for things extreme. Go really up, go really down, get really close, and think what an impact this has. we have the barrel of the gun right in our face. And we're a little bit below it too. So we get a little bit of the imagery here out of focus. So think this wouldn't have the same impact if it was wide angle. And just moving to the opposite though, here we do have a wide angle. And this needs to be a wide angle, and it's also shot from extreme high, kind of like our Silence of the Lamb. And it makes her look very alone, right? It's up, she looks very small, we get this long shadow. So this is a great way for the camera to be able to help drive this narrative of this person alone by herself. All right, so these are just, a couple of ideas. You're welcome to do whatever sort of extreme weird contraption that you can think of with your camera, but what I'm looking for is that you take your camera, you take any subject, and you just start trying to shoot it in some unusual way.